Join me as I dive into the spine-chilling horror stories from apartment 129 and see if I can make it through the night without getting too scared. Apartment 129 has a notorious reputation, with spine-tingling accounts that even hardened skeptics fear to hear in full. It's not just a place to live, it's a place of relentless, horrifying experiences that never seem to let go. The stories about apartment 129 had intrigued me for months. It was infamous in the building, and not just for creaky floors or noisy neighbors. Past tenants whispered of voices in the dead of night, of footsteps that seemed to tread where no human walked, and of a strange, almost otherworldly cold that filled the rooms. I went there to investigate firsthand. The air was thick, almost stifling as I stepped inside the hallway, noticing that none of the lights seemed to penetrate the shadows lingering near apartment 129. An eerie silence settled as soon as I reached the door. My first interview was with Sarah, a former tenant who lived in apartment 129 for a brief 6 months before fleeing in terror. She recalled the whispers, describing them in disturbing detail. They would start faintly in the early hours, barely audible, like a voice speaking from the other side of a thin wall. At first, she blamed her imagination, even dismissed it as a neighbor's TV. But as the whispers grew clearer, she realized they were speaking her name. One night, she swore the voice was right beside her. When she turned, she saw nothing but felt a chill close in, as though the air had thickened around her. The whispers became a nightly terror. When they wouldn't stop, Sarah tried talking back, asking, "What do you want?" But all she received was silence, followed by a sudden, inexplicable slam of her bedroom door, though no one was there. After Sarah's experience, I met John, who described an encounter that seemed even more unnerving. Late one night, John came home from work, and as he reached the door to his apartment, he felt a shiver run down his spine. Turning around, he saw her, a woman in a tattered white dress, gliding down the hallway with inky black eyes that seemed to consume all light. Her face was a pale, deathly white, yet something about her felt all too alive. He tried to look away, but her presence was magnetic. She moved closer with every blink, sending waves of cold that seemed to seep into his very bones. He stumbled backward, fumbling for his door, but as he glanced back, she had vanished. That night, John didn't sleep. The chill lingered in his bones, and every sound, every creak, seemed to echo with her presence. The next day, I returned to apartment 129, hoping to capture some evidence of these phenomena myself. Inside, a strange, pungent smell filled the air. And there, etched into the walls, were faint symbols, almost invisible to the naked eye but undeniably present upon close inspection. Each symbol pulsed faintly, as if holding a life of its own. I felt a sudden cold rush over me, making my skin prickle. The symbols twisted into strange alien forms, shapes that seemed to contort as I watched, like something was trying to speak through them. The caretaker, a grizzled older man named Bill, informed me that the symbols had been there since he started working. "They say the ground here's cursed," he muttered, casting nervous glances at the walls. He didn't want to stay long. These walls, they hold memories. One of the most harrowing accounts came from Emily, a young woman who had only stayed in apartment 129 for a month. She had been asleep when she felt it, a hand, cold as ice, gripping her ankle. Startled, she opened her eyes to darkness thicker than anything she'd felt before. An overwhelming sense of dread paralyzed her, as something unseen seemed to pull her downward. She couldn't move, couldn't scream. All she could feel was the terror wrapping around her, choking her breath as though she was suffocating under its weight. When she finally broke free and switched on the light, there was nothing but bruises in the shape of handprints marked her ankle. Emily left that morning, refusing to stay another night. My investigation revealed a dark history. Decades before, the land on which apartment 129 stood had been a burial ground. The records were incomplete, but there were rumors of desecration. An entire community of souls had been disturbed and left to wander. Some locals believed the spirits weren't evil by nature, but had grown twisted with rage over their displacement. They became restless, latching onto those who dared disturb their once sacred ground. The symbols on the walls, the eerie whispering, and the sightings of figures in the shadows, all of it seemed tied to this unrest. The apartment itself was like a living, breathing entity, feeding off the energy of its tenants, a host to restless spirits who would never let go. I decided to spend one last night in apartment 129. The air was thick, suffused with a dread that felt like it was seeping into my very soul. As night fell, the atmosphere grew colder. Then the whispers began, faint, haunting murmurs that seemed to swirl around me, growing louder, more insistent. A sudden chill brushed my neck, and as I turned, I saw her. The woman from John's account, her black eyes piercing through me, filled with a malevolence that froze me to the spot. She moved forward, reaching out a hand, and I felt my body go numb as darkness consumed the room. I scrambled to the door, flinging it open and stumbling into the hallway. The door to apartment 129 slammed shut behind me with a force that shook the walls. After that night, I knew I would never return to apartment 129. The stories were no longer just tales. They were a warning. There was something within those walls, something far darker than I could ever understand. Whatever haunted that place didn't want to be disturbed and had no intention of letting anyone leave unchanged. Apartment 129 remains vacant now, a silent relic of terror, waiting patiently for the next soul brave or foolish enough to enter. If you have your own haunting tale, or if you think you could brave apartment 129, let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey into the depths of terror, don't forget to check out my other horror videos.